Adolf Hitler was born in Austria in 1889, not in Germany. His early life wasn't marked by any great success. He was just an ordinary boy who didn't really excel in school. His relationship with his father was often difficult and tense. Hitler dreamed of becoming a great artist, a painter of grand buildings, a painter of landscapes. He moved to Vienna, a city teeming with different cultures, different ideas, different people, hoping to find his fortune and make a name as an artist. But his dreams were shattered by harsh reality. He faced repeated rejection in Vienna. He applied to the Academy of Fine Arts twice, and both times was denied. That failure hit him hard, leaving him adrift and resentful. He spent years living in poverty, sleeping in homeless shelters, selling small paintings for money. During this period, his dangerous ideas took shape. He was exposed to strong anti-Semitic views and rising nationalist sentiment, blaming others for his failures, especially Jewish people. The outbreak of World War I in 1914 gave him purpose. He volunteered for the German army, served as a dispatch runner, and was decorated for bravery. Finding belonging and intense German nationalism. After the war, Germany was a nation in chaos. The old empire gave way to the fragile Weimar Republic, facing a ruined economy, high unemployment, and the humiliating Treaty of Versailles and reparations. In this anger and instability, Hitler joined the German Workers' Party, quickly became its leader, and renamed it the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazi Party. A master of propaganda, he held large theatrical rallies with dramatic speeches, stirring music, and thousands of uniformed followers. He offered simple answers: restore greatness, tear up Versailles, create jobs, and gave people scapegoats, Jews, communists, and a weak democratic government. In 1923, he tried to seize power by force. The beer hall putsch failed, was arrested, and turned his trial into a grand stage. In prison, he wrote Mein Kampf, laying out his hateful ideology and plans for Germany. After release, he pursued power legally via elections, building a nationwide party machine within the very democracy he aimed to destroy. The Great Depression in 1929 devastated Germany, deepening disillusion with Weimar and pushing voters toward extremists, Nazis, and communists. As Nazi support surged in the early 1930s, conservative elites thought they could control him. On January 30, 1933, President Hindenburg appointed Hitler chancellor. The ideology of Nazism was built on extreme nationalism and racial hatred. At its core was belief in a so-called Aryan master race, with Germans cast as its purest members, destined to rule over others. Nazis preached blood purity and warned that mixing with inferior races would poison the nation. Führerprinzip, the leader's word as absolute law, rejected democracy, debate, elections, and majority rule, demanding total obedience to Hitler. Power was centralized at the top. Dissent was treated as treason. Lebensraum, living space, held that the German race needed land and resources to be taken from inferior Slavs in Poland and the Soviet Union, a racial crusade. The plan: conquer, remove or enslave local populations, resettle with Germans, making war inevitable. Nazis falsely blamed Jews for everything: defeat in World War I, economic collapse, inventing a worldwide Jewish conspiracy. Jews were cast as a dangerous race, corrupting German culture. This obsessive hatred drove persecution and ultimately a plan for mass extermination. The Holocaust was the systematic, state-sponsored persecution and murder of approximately 6 million European Jews by the Nazi regime and its collaborators. It was carefully planned, beginning with discriminatory laws, forced ghettoization and slave labor, escalating to mass murder on an industrial scale. The term Holocaust comes from a Greek word meaning sacrifice by fire, now used for this unique, hunted Victims were seized across Nazi-occupied Europe, France, the Soviet Union, hunted in every occupied country. They were ordinary people, doctors, lawyers, shopkeepers, artists, factory workers, farmers, men, women, and children. About 1.5 million were children, targeted simply for being born Jewish. Killing evolved. Early in the East, mobile squads, Einsatzgruppen, followed the army, rounding up Jews, Roma, and communist officials, and shooting them into mass graves. Over 1 million murdered this way. Leaders sought a more efficient and impersonal method: extermination camps. The final phase: death camps. Auschwitz-Birkenau, Treblinka, Sobibor, factories of death. Victims were transported in sealed cattle cars, Most were sent directly to gas chambers and murdered with poison gas, bodies burned in large crematoria, an industrialized attempt to erase a people. The Nazis' obsessive hatred of Jewish people was the central pillar of their ideology and the primary motivation for the Holocaust. Anti-Semitism had existed for centuries, but Nazis transformed it into a racial theory, treating Judaism as an unchangeable race. Propaganda portrayed Jews as vermin and parasites, a threat to Aryan purity, stripping them of humanity. They spun conspiracies of global Jewish control over finance, governments and media, blaming Jews for communism and for international capitalism, for Germany's defeat and depression. Casting Jews as a malevolent enemy created a scapegoat and unified the nation. Jews were primary targets, but Nazis also persecuted millions. Roma people, hundreds of thousands murdered, people with disabilities, over 250,000 killed in the secret T4 program. Slavic peoples, Poles and Russians, deemed subhuman, enslaved and murdered. Political opponents, communists, socialists, trade unionists were arrested early. Jehovah's Witnesses were punished for refusing oaths. Homosexual men were persecuted as deviants. Many were imprisoned, tortured, and murdered. It is complex to ask what ordinary Germans knew. Many clearly saw persecution, boycotts of Jewish shops, synagogues burned on Kristallnacht, neighbors isolated, humiliated, and disappearing. Anti-Jewish laws were public, propaganda was everywhere, many supported it, others were indifferent or afraid to speak out. The final solution was concealed, camps mostly in occupied Poland. Officials used euphemisms like resettlement and special treatment. Some information leaked via soldiers and railway workers, but detailed knowledge of gas chambers was likely not widespread. To many in the 1930s, Nazis restored order, pride and jobs, public works, autobahns, rallies, and people overlooked or embraced the regime's darker side. Fear enforced compliance. The Gestapo's surveillance made dissent dangerous, arrests without trial, torture, execution. Most complied, out of belief, opportunism, or fear. By spring 1945, Germany faced total defeat. The Allies closed in from west and east. Cities lay in rubble. Hitler retreated to the Führer bunker, broken, raging at generals. As the Red Army neared, he refused capture, dictated his will without remorse, and on April 30th, 1945, shot himself. Eva Braun died by cyanide. Their bodies were carried to the garden, doused in gasoline, and set on fire. Soviets later found the charred remains. On May 8th, Germany surrendered. Allies liberated camps, revealing atrocities. About 6 million Jews and millions of other victims, Roma, Poles, Soviet POWs, people with disabilities, were murdered. At least 11 million people in total. Hitler's death ended the Third Reich, but his legacy warns. Hatred, nationalism, and propaganda can breed unimaginable cruelty. We must remember, defend democracy, stand against injustice, so it is never repeated.